came with the four members of REM, the band that defined alternative rock for a generation. They went from playing in an abandoned church to selling out arenas worldwide. But after the music quieted down, where did lead singer Michael Stipe, guitarist Peter Buck, bassist Mike Mills, and drummer Bill Berry end up? Stick around. Their post-REM journeys might surprise you. Number 4. Michael Stipe. Michael Stipe was the face and voice of REM, known for his distinctive stage presence and soul-bearing lyrics. But did you know he was once so shy that he mumbled his early songs? In the 1980s, young Michael often hid under a curtain of hair, barely looking at the audience. Over time, he blossomed into a confident performer, dancing in music videos and standing up for causes he believed in. By the 90s, Stipe had become an icon, appearing on magazine covers with his blue-painted face during the Monster Tour era, and guiding REM to global fame with songs that defined a generation. In 1995, Michael faced a terrifying moment when Bill Berry collapsed on stage from a brain aneurysm. The incident shook the whole band. "I wasn't specifically thinking about quitting the band, but maybe reassessing my priorities," Bill later said of that period. Michael helped his friend recover, and REM continued. But the brush with tragedy made them all cherish their bond even more. When Bill decided to retire in 1997, Stipe supported his choice despite the emotional toll. Michael carried on with Peter and Mike, leading REM as a trio for 14 more years, through albums like Up and Accelerate, until they decided to end the band for good. By 2011, after 31 years of non-stop music, Michael Stipe was exhausted. He told his bandmates during the final album sessions, "I need to be away from this for a long time," prompting Peter Buck to reply, "How about forever?" And that was it. They all agreed it was time. Stipe later explained that REM was all-encompassing and it was exhausting. It was a lot, and that everything has a life, and at some point it ends. He was proud of their incredible journey, but felt it was the right moment to step away. When REM disbanded, Michael Stipe did something unexpected. He stepped back from music entirely. Instead, he returned to his first love, visual art. Remember, Michael was an art student before the band took off, and he'd always been snapping photos on tour. Now he threw himself into photography, sculpture, and multimedia projects. "It's so nice to make something tangible that I can hold in my hand," he said. Comparing art to music, he spent years in his studio crafting bronze sculptures of old cassette tapes and Polaroid cameras, and producing limited edition art books filled with evocative images and ideas. One of his projects, a photo book called Our Interference Times, explored the clash between the analog past and the digital present, very fitting for a man who straddled both eras. Michael also became known for his advocacy on social and environmental issues. He's always been socially conscious, from supporting LGBTQ+ rights to climate change action, but in the 2010s, he focused on making a difference off stage. In fact, when Michael finally did dip his toes back into music, it was to support a cause. 8 years after REM's breakup, he surprised fans by releasing his first-ever solo song, Your Capricious Soul, in October 2019. Rather than a big commercial splash, he quietly put the song on his website for 77 cents, with proceeds going to climate activist group Extinction Rebellion. "I took a long break from music, and I wanted to jump back in," Michael said, explaining that the urgency of the climate crisis gave me the incentive to push the release and not wait. The song was a synthy, artful track, very much Stipe, and it proved he still had that magical voice fans remembered. Since then, Michael has released a couple more solo tracks, each with little fanfare, almost as if he's sharing gifts with fans rather than launching a new pop career. He's also popped up for special performances every now and then. One memorable moment was in 2012, only a year after REM ended, when Michael made a surprise appearance at a Hurricane Sandy benefit concert. He joined Coldplay's Chris Martin on stage at Madison Square Garden to sing Losing My Religion acoustically, bringing the crowd to its feet. For many, it was a goosebump moment to hear Stipe's haunting vocals live again, if only for one song. But by and large, Michael has kept a low profile in music, preferring to live life as a private citizen, splitting time between homes in Athens, New York, and even Berlin. He's often spotted at art galleries instead of rock clubs these days. Yet, Stipe remains deeply proud of REM and fiercely protective of its legacy. He has repeatedly shut down rumors of the band reuniting for a tour or album. "What's done is done," he insists, saying he's 100% serious that REM's touring days are over. When asked about a reunion, he gives a firm no. Unlike some rock stars who wink and say, maybe, Michael won't lead fans on. In his view, the band ended perfectly, and there's no need to go back. Number 3. Peter Buck. If Michael was the heart of REM, Peter Buck was the sonic architect, crafting the ringing guitar sound that made songs instantly recognizable. Peter is the one who co-founded the band after meeting Michael in a record store, a true music nerd at heart. Throughout REM's run, Peter remained the cool, laid-back guitar hero, often standing off to the side of the stage with a Rickenbacker guitar, letting the music speak louder than any rock star antics. But behind the scenes, he was a driving force in songwriting and also a huge champion of other bands. Peter famously introduced the world to bands like Nirvana by wearing their T-shirts early on. By the end of REM's journey, though, Peter had grown weary of the music industry machine. He loved music, but hated the business side, the endless meetings, photo shoots, and corporate stuff that came with being in a superstar band. "I had come to hate everything about being in the band except writing songs, playing songs, and recording them," Buck admitted, noting that he'd compiled a long list of what he couldn't stand. "It was the money, the politics, having to meet new people 24 hours a day, not being in charge of my own decisions." So when Michael suggested taking a long break in 2011, Peter was the first to say, "How about forever?" He was ready to be done with the rock star life. But don't think for a second that meant Peter Buck was done with music. Peter basically went from the stadium to the garage, and he's never been happier. Free from big label expectations, he returned to the DIY ethos of his youth. In 2012, barely a year after REM's split, Peter astonished fans by releasing a self-titled solo album, on vinyl only, with almost no publicity. Why? Because he could. He deliberately avoided the usual promotional blitz. In fact, Peter wrote a tongue-in-cheek message explaining his new approach. After 30-plus years in the professional music business, he realized the only parts he loved were writing songs, recording songs, and playing songs. So for his solo work, there'd be no interviews, no photos, no videos, no promo copies for radio. Just the music. Take it or leave it. "I am doing exactly what I love, in exactly the way I want to do it," he said. Proudly, it was Peter's way of reclaiming music as fun, not a job. That first solo record, simply titled Peter Buck, was a raw, quirky collection of songs. Peter even took a turn at singing, despite always joking that he couldn't sing a lick. He limited the pressing to vinyl for indie record shops, and you know what? Fans hunted it down eagerly. It sold out its small run, which delighted Buck. He cheekily noted how the tiny label's phone rang off the hook with orders, so much that they had to unplug it. For Peter, this was perfect. No stress, no image polish, just music. He followed up with a second vinyl-only album in 2014, humorously titled, "I Am Back to Blow Your Mind Once Again." Clearly, the man hasn't lost his wit. Beyond solo records, Peter Buck has kept extremely busy collaborating and jamming in various bands. He's arguably the most musically active of the four members, post-REM. He's like a kid in a candy store, trying every flavor of music that interests him. To name a few projects, Peter formed a band called Filthy Friends with Corin Tucker of Slater-Kenny fame, cranking out some good old rock and roll in small clubs. He also teamed up with singer-songwriter Joseph Arthur in a duo cleverly named Arthur Buck, releasing an album in 2018, and he didn't stop there. Peter has played with the -5, a long-running side group, and even joined indie legend Robin Hitchcock as a member of the Venus 3. It seems every time you turn around, Peter is on stage somewhere, strumming away with a big grin. One of Peter's most endearing post-REM adventures is the Baseball Project, a fun supergroup he started with Mike Mills and some musician buddies who, like him, are huge baseball fans. They write songs all about baseball lore, from famous players to lovable underdogs. Can you imagine? Rockers geeking out about baseball through music. The Baseball Project has released 4 albums so far, and the songs are actually really catchy and clever. Their most recent album, Grand Salami Time, came out in 2023, showing that Peter, on guitar, and Mike, on bass, still love playing together when the pressure's off. The band even gets to perform at actual baseball stadiums. They've played at major league parks in cities like Boston and Chicago, doing the national anthem and throwing the first pitch. It's a far cry from the Grammys, but Peter seems absolutely in his element, combining 2 of his passions. Peter Buck just loves music. He may have left the rock star rat race behind, but at heart, he's still that guy who would riff on his guitar in the Athens club scene for free pizza and beer. Fans sometimes run into him at record stores or small shows in Portland, where he spends much of his time now, and say he's as approachable as ever, and while he's intentionally avoided big REM reunions, Peter has remained close to his old bandmates. In fact, on rare special occasions, he's happily played with them again, like at his own wedding in 2013, when all 4 members of REM were in attendance and ended up jamming together for fun. Number 2. Mike Mills. Mike Mills was REM's secret weapon, the bass guitarist who could also play piano, arrange string parts, and belt out gorgeous harmonies. Remember those high-backing vocals on Fall on Me or Man on the Moon? That's Mike. On stage, you'd see him with colorful suits and a bass slung low, often smiling behind his shaggy blonde hair. Mike was the most easygoing member of the band, but also the one with a deep musical toolkit. He wrote the music for some of REM's prettiest songs. He's credited as the main composer of Night Swimming and the fan favorite Don't Go Back to Rockville, among others. When REM started, Mike was barely out of his teens, just a college kid who loved the Beatles and B-52s. Over 31 years in the band, he grew into a seasoned songwriter and performer. He also took on a lot of musical duties, from playing keyboards on songs to even singing lead on a few tracks, like the upbeat tune Superman. Mike's warmth and humor always balanced out Michael Stipe's intensity and Peter Buck's cool vibe. And when Bill Berry left in 1997, Mike stepped up even more, filling any gaps and helping steer REM forward. After the 2011 breakup, Mike Mills embraced a surprisingly diverse second act. Instead of forming a rock band or going solo, Mike decided to explore the world of classical music, something totally unexpected yet perfectly fitting for his talents. In 2016, just 5 years post-REM, Mike unveiled an ambitious project, a concerto for violin, rock band, and orchestra that he co-composed. Yes, a full-blown classical crossover concerto. He wrote it alongside an old childhood friend, Robert McDuffie, who happens to be a renowned violinist. Together, they blended Mike's gift for melody with orchestral strings, essentially merging rock and classical in a new way. The concerto premiered with Mike playing bass and piano on some parts, while McDuffie bowed a 1735 Stradivarius violin worth $3.5 million. Talk about highbrow meets rock and roll. They even took this show on the road, performing with symphony orchestras and concert halls around the country. Rocks were intrigued, and fans loved seeing Mike in a totally different spotlight. It showed that Mills's musical range goes way beyond 4-minute pop songs. As Mike explained, the goal was to break down the walls between genres and show it's all just music, whether rock or classical. Pretty cool, right? Of course, Mike hasn't abandoned rock music either. He's collaborated often with his old pal, Peter Buck, on various fun projects. The baseball project, which we mentioned earlier, includes Mike as the bassist and one of the vocalists. Mike joined that group a few years after REM ended, and for the first time got to sing lead on some songs about legendary pitchers and home run hitters, a far cry from Losing My Religion. But it shows Mike's playful side. The Baseball Project's third album even marked the first time Mike played bass on all tracks during REM years. He was sometimes too busy for side project sessions. And on their 2023 album, Grand Salami Time, Mike contributed a track he wrote about doctored baseballs called Stuff, proving his songwriting is still sharp and witty. He's clearly having a blast with this hobby band that lets him rock out without pressure. Additionally, Mike has popped up in numerous musical settings. He's joined tribute concerts. For instance, he has appeared at events honoring Big Star, one of REM's favorite bands, and has guested with groups like the Smithereens. In 2019, he even toured with singer-songwriter Joseph Arthur, alongside Peter Buck, for a series of gigs. If there's good music and good friends involved, Mike Mills is there with a grin. He's also active on social media, often tweeting about sports. He's a big football fan, too, and advocating for causes like voting rights. One thing fans love about Mike is that he's very approachable and down-to-earth. People in Athens, Georgia, still spot him around town at ball games or local restaurants. He never cultivated a superstar aura. Maybe because he's the bassist, he was okay not always being center stage. In interviews, Mike has said he's grateful REM ended when it did, and that it felt right. He's voiced zero regrets, embracing the freedom to try new things. Unlike the others, he values the lifelong friendship with his bandmates above all. Mike was the one who publicly stated in 2013 that there were zero plans for a reunion, kindly letting fans know that REM meant it when they said goodbye. Number 1. Bill Berry was REM's powerhouse drummer and the band's steadying force. Quiet but mischievously funny, Bill was the one who often kept the other three from drifting too far apart. He also had a knack for songwriting. He co-wrote hits like Man on the Moon and Everybody Hurts, even playing bass and piano in the studio at times. Fans affectionately called REM the guys with 3 musicians and a drummer who could all write songs. On tour, Bill sat atop his drum riser, keeping time with a slight smile, content to let Michael and Mike roam the stage. He wasn't seeking the limelight. In fact, Bill always said he planned to retire early, and he meant it. The biggest turning point for both Bill and the band came on March 1, 1995, in Lausanne, Switzerland. In the middle of an REM concert, Bill suddenly collapsed. He'd suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm on stage. It was a life-or-death emergency. Remarkably, Bill survived after immediate surgery, making a full recovery. But the scare changed his outlook. It may have lowered my energy level, and I just didn't have the drive I once did, he later reflected. Bill started reevaluating his life. 17 years of nonstop recording and touring had taken a toll, and now he craved a simpler, more normal life out of the spotlight. In October 1997, after much soul-searching, Bill Berry made the heartfelt decision to leave REM and retire from music at age 39. In the press conference, he joked that he was off to be a farmer, and he wasn't entirely kidding. The band and fans were devastated to see him go, but they respected his wishes completely. Michael Stipe said at the time, "For me, this is maybe the opportunity for Bill to become Bill again," emphasizing that his friend's happiness was what mattered. Bill's departure was amicable and on his own terms. It also made him the only member of REM not to stick around for the entire ride. Mike Mills later admitted that when Bill left, "We felt like a three-legged dog trying to carry on." But carry on they did with Bill's blessing, while Bill himself disappeared into a much quieter life. True to his word, Bill Berry moved to the countryside in Georgia and indeed became a farmer. He had purchased land outside Athens years before, and now he settled there, enjoying the peace and routine of rural life. For 25 years, Bill led a low-profile existence, raising his son, tending to his farm with some help from a caretaker, and indulging in simple pleasures like golf and fishing. He once said, "I love my 17 years with REM, but I was ready to move on to a different phase of my life." And he did just that. He swapped tour buses for tractors and stage lights for starry country nights. Apart from local folks, many would hardly recognize the former rock drummer if he passed by in town driving a pickup truck. That doesn't mean Bill completely put down the drumsticks. Every now and then, he'd pop up for a sporadic reunion or guest appearance, almost always with his old bandmates. He joined REM when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007, grinning from ear to ear as he played "Man on the Moon" with them on stage. Friends said it was like no time had passed at all. Bill also occasionally played charity gigs in Athens and sat in on recording sessions for friends' albums, always quietly, never seeking credit or spotlight. Notably, in 2013 at Peter Buck's wedding reception, Bill hopped on the drums alongside Mike and Peter for some impromptu REM tunes, making fans dream of a full reunion, though Michael Stipe purposely didn't sing with all of them at once to avoid it being official. It was clear the camaraderie was still there. For the most part, though, Bill was perfectly content not being a rock star. He once remarked that while he missed the guys, he didn't miss the industry grind at all. However, as the years went on, something began to stir in Bill. Perhaps as his son grew up and he found more free time, he started feeling that old itch to play again, just for fun. And so, in 2022, a full quarter-century after leaving REM, Bill Berry did something none of us expected. He joined a new band. Bill formed a group called the Bad Ends, teaming up with local Athens musicians, including a singer from the band 5/8. It all happened by chance. He bumped into a friend in town who, half-jokingly, said, "Hey, Bill, want to play drums in a band again?" To everyone's delight, Bill said yes. It was an opportunity to play in the game again, he quipped. The Bad Ends started rehearsing, and it was like Bill never missed a beat. In late 2022, they played a hometown show in Athens, and in January 2023, they released their debut album, The Power and the Glory. The album has that classic Athens alt-rock vibe. You can even hear echoes of early REM jangle in there, and Bill's drumming sounds as solid as ever. Longtime fans were overjoyed to hear new music from him, but Bill kept it all very modest. No big worldwide tours or anything, just some local gigs, and the satisfaction of making music with friends. In recent interviews, Bill Berry has candidly admitted that he did sometimes feel pangs of regret after leaving REM. "Of course I did. That was a weird time for me, and I made it weird for these guys too," he said, reflecting on his 1997 exit. He emphasized that his health scare wasn't an excuse, but it did change him. "I didn't regret it at the time, but I've sort of regretted it a little later." Bill confessed, "Hearing this, you realize that even rock stars wonder what might have been. But Bill is not one to dwell on the negative." He looked around at Michael, Mike, and Peter during a recent reunion interview and said, We're all sitting here, friends again, with a smile. For him, that friendship is the real treasure.